Hi, I'm Janis Staggs, Director of Curatorial and Manager of Publications at Neue Galerie New York. And I'm delighted to share with you today a presentation on Wiener Werkstätte Jewelry. In today's presentation, I'll focus on a few exemplary patrons of Wiener Werkstätte Jewelry, including Fritz Vandorfer, Gustav Klimt, Emilia Fluge, Adele Bloch-Bauer, and Sonja Knips. Notably, all were also clients of Gustav Klimt. Art, fashion, and jewelry were inextricably linked in Vienna 1900. The individuals highlighted in this talk interwove art in various aspects of their daily lives, and they used their patronage as a means to express their unique identity and to demonstrate their sophisticated taste. The Secession, an artist organization initially led by Klimp, ushered modernity into Vienna in 1897. The members of this secession aimed for equality between art forms, and they saw no distinction between fine and decorative arts, which were frequently exhibited in tandem in their shows. The secession championed the ideal of the Gesamtkunstwerk, or total work of art, wherein all elements within a space should work together in harmony. The Gesamtkunstwerk approach was adopted by architects who sought to unify architectural elements with interior furnishings in their commercial and domestic projects. They sometimes also incorporated fashion and decorative accessories in their complete artistic ensembles. Dress and adornment are among the most personal expressions of one's unique identity. Female garments in particular carry deep associations with the domestic realm. Likewise, jewelry was viewed as an important element in a fashion ensemble and thus had an elevated status. The 8th Vienna Secession exhibition of 1900 was one of the group's most important shows. Modern fine and decorative arts were installed side by side, and jewelry comprised about 10% of the works displayed. In keeping with one of the Secession's stated goals of introducing the Viennese public to contemporary art from outside of Austria, a large number of the work on view came from abroad, including examples by the Belgian-born Henri van de Velde and the British designer Charles Robert Ashby. The latter provided various articles of jewelry as well as metalwork goods and furniture. A critic summarized the significance of Ashby's contribution, writing, "Ashby really made art handicraft democratic, even in business terms. He raised the social, artistic, and commercial status of the craftsman, set him to work under his own direct supervision, and gave him a share of the profits, while the middleman was eliminated. That is what he called his workshop principle." Ashby's designs proved popular, and a number of sales were made. The Austrian Museum of Art and Industry, today known as the MAK, acquired 4 pieces of silver for its collection, including the mustard pot and spoon shown here on the right. Another influential participant was the group known as the Glasgow Four, comprised of Charles Rennie Mackintosh, his wife Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh, James Herbert McNair, and his wife Frances MacDonald McNair. The Scottish Room occupied the final gallery in the exhibition. It was a completely furnished interior with pale walls and dark high-back chairs. Oil-painted gesso panels and other decorative elements by Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh depicted women with long flowing hair and cloaked in loose-fitting floor-length garments, a style evocative of how the artist herself dressed, as you can see in the photo here on the left. In fact, during the time that the couple stayed in Vienna to oversee the installation of the room, Margaret attracted attention for her distinctive sartorial choices. One press account described her as a young lady with reddish hair, dressed elegantly in an unusual manner. 2 of the most important founding members of the Secession were the architect Joseph Hoffman and the painter Koloman Moser. Both submitted works for display, and they designed shows and graphic materials for the Secession. They were instrumental in the organization of the 8th Vienna Secession exhibition, and they took up the design of decorative arts around 1900. Each turned their hand toward fashion, jewelry, and related accessories in the intervening years. In 1902, textile industrialist Fritz Vandorfer hired Hoffman, Moser, and Mackintosh to renovate portions of his home. Vandorfer had met Hoffman and Moser through the Secession. Likewise, Vandorfer became acquainted with the Scottish couple during the planning for the 8th Vienna Secession exhibition, and a friendship had blossomed between them. Vandorfer was one of the most cosmopolitan art patrons in Vienna 1900, and he favored modern art and design. He was an avid supporter of the Secession, and he used his wealth to assemble a prestigious collection and to construct a customized home suitable for an art lover, a true Gesamtkunstwerk. Hoffman oversaw the dining room and other portions of the house. Moser was responsible for the gallery dedicated to Vandorfer's art collection, shown here on the right. The Mackintosh couple designed the music room. This modern milieu helped Vandorfer to define himself as an enlightened and avant-garde tastemaker. Vandorfer's collection included works by Klimt, George Minette, and Aubrey Beardsley. Perhaps his most scandalous possession was Klimp's painting Hope One, a work considered so shocking that it was safely tucked behind locked, albeit glass doors. While engaged in the Vandorfer project, Hoffman and Moser recognized the value of controlling both the design of goods and their fabrication. They envisioned a workshop modeled after Ashby's Guild of Handicraft, where they could work closely with craftsmen to make good domestic requisites. Notably, around that time, Hoffman had completed a study trip to the United Kingdom, where he met Ashby in London. While the exact genesis of the Wiener Werkstätte remains unknown, Hoffman recollected that the Wiener Werkstätte was born in one of Vienna's famous coffee houses, the Café Heinrichshof, and the subject of a Wiener Werkstätte postcard. In Hoffman's telling of events, Vandorfer joined a discussion between Hoffman and Moser about establishing an arts and crafts workshop. Purportedly, Vandorfer asked what it would cost to realize this goal, and then enthusiastically provided the funds needed to rent and furnish a working space and to hire craftsmen. Regardless of how the Wiener Werkstätte was conceived, the firm was registered with the Vienna Trade Ministry by May 1903 as an artisan production cooperative. Only 6 men were noted in the Wiener Werkstätte's roster at the outset. Hoffman and Moser served as directors and designers. Vandorfer was the treasurer, and there were 3 craftsmen, a silversmith and 2 metalworkers. Soon, the Wiener Werkstätte outgrew its small quarters and it moved to a larger space, adding new workshops and a showroom to display its luxurious wares. Hoffman and Moser consciously modeled the Wiener Werkstätte after Ashby's Guild of Handicraft, which had been established in Great Britain in 1888 to foster collaboration between artists and craftsmen. Industrialization was viewed as undermining the role of the craftsman in Britain. By reintroducing a medieval guild type of manufacturing system, the aim was to infuse pride in production and to create better quality goods so that daily life would be uplifted by art. Some even viewed the pursuit of beauty as symbolic of elevated morals and cultured discernment. In the Austro-Hungarian Empire, circumstances were different than in Great Britain. Industrialization was not as widespread. Thus, the goals of the founders of the Wiener Werkstätte did not precisely mirror those of their British counterparts. While Ashby's Guild of Handicraft aspired to produce well-made items that would be affordable to the masses, by contrast, the founders of the Wiener Werkstätte recognized that quality and fine craftsmanship came at a price. In their working program of 1905, Hoffman and Moser wrote, "We neither can nor will compete for the lowest prices. That is chiefly done at the worker's expense. We, on the contrary, regard it as our highest duty to return him to a position in which he can take pleasure in his labor and lead a life in keeping with human dignity." Jewelry was among the first objects fabricated by the Wiener Werkstätte. In fact, jewelry was of such primary importance that it was singled out for special mention in the working program. Hoffman and Moser noted, "We use many semi-precious stones, especially in jewelry. They make up in beauty of color and infinite variety what they lack in intrinsic value by comparison with diamonds. We feel bound to admit that a silver ornament can be just as valuable as an object made of gold and precious stones." In this brochure, which also functioned as a manifesto for the workshop's goals, a number of pieces of jewelry were illustrated, as shown here. For example, the choker is equipped with a custom-fitted box, underscoring not only the importance of presentation, but also the care that was taken to protect these precious and handmade goods. Vandorfer was one of the most passionate customers of the Wiener Werkstätte and one of the first buyers of its jewelry. In the middle is a silver pendant designed by Moser depicting a lizard clutching an opal. This oddly sensuous design may have been inspired by Vandorfer's personal letterhead, shown here on the left, which incorporates a reptile or toad almost as a personal avatar. It is possible that Vandorfer identified with and even commissioned this pendant, which he acquired as a gift for his wife, Lily. On the right is a view of the studio in Vandorfer's home. Hoffman was responsible for this radical space, which featured ornate graphic details on the walls to complement the art installed in the room, including a landscape by Klimt and a sculpture by Minne. This environment was perfectly in keeping with the belief, as one critic put it, that modern art makes man more human, stronger, healthier, and more independent. At Christmas 1904, Vandorfer purchased a brooch designed by Hoffman, shown here on the right, as a present for his wife. Like the lizard pendant from the prior slide, this is a unique piece. In keeping with the arts and crafts aesthetic, the stones are cut en cabochon, and they were selected more for their painterly qualities than for their intrinsic value. The speckled leopardite plaques in each corner play beautifully off the coral, lapis, opal, and moonstones. Careful study of Hoffman's sketch reveals that these were not the stones originally earmarked for this design. Most likely, either the gems that he had indicated were not available, or when they were assembled in the workshop, the desired result was not achieved. Frankly, even in the sketch, the brooch appears too monochromatic. Perhaps stones with greater contrast were substituted to achieve a more dynamic result. The hammered gold plaque at the center emphasizes that the brooch was handmade, despite its appearance of almost mechanical precision. The tiny rose-cut diamonds in the channels around the plaque add sparkle and help to signify the wealth of the client. Hoffman would have worked alongside the craftsman to ensure that his design was properly executed. It was a collaborative process. Klimt himself was another prominent patron of the Wiener Werkstätte. His studio was refurbished by the Wiener Werkstätte at Vandorfer's expense. One indication of the high esteem that the painter was held in by this closely knit group. The antechamber of Klimt's last studio at Feldmuthgasse 11, which he occupied from spring 1912 until his death in 1918, was completely arranged by Hoffman with furniture of his design, thus creating a space for the artist that functioned as a true Gesamtkunstwerk. Klimt acquired Wiener Werkstätte jewelry and accessories for his own use, including the cufflinks and Taipan shown here, as well as gifts for family and friends. The gold and malachite seal on the left was a unique work made for him. The gold and turquoise Taipan, attributed to Edward Joseph Wimmer-Visgerl, was something Klimt wore on formal occasions. It can be seen in the late photographic portrait of the artist from around 1917 here on the right. In the Taipan, the emphasis is on the stone itself, which has been set to best advantage. Stones were selected for their painterly qualities and possibly also for their symbolic meaning. Intrinsic value seems to have carried little weight, as noted in the working program. The record books of the Wiener Werkstätte indicate that the stones employed were provided by the client on occasion. In this case, Klimt may have favored turquoise because of the belief that the stone is endowed with talismanic qualities, an attribute perhaps comforting to a known hypochondriac. Klimt also bought Wiener Werkstätte jewelry for the women in his life. His sister-in-law, fashion designer Emilia Flügge, was the greatest beneficiary of his munificence. Between 1903 and 1906, he gave her at least 10 pieces of Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. Klimt and Flügge met around 1890 when his brother Ernst married her sister Helena. Over the years, Emilia Flügge and Klimp developed a close friendship and enjoyed family vacations together. Although their relationship probably began on a romantic note, it appears to have evolved into something more platonic. Neither ever married, although Klimt carried on numerous romantic dalliances and fathered at least several illegitimate children. Flügge was his muse and trusted lifelong friend, and she wore a Wiener Werkstätte ring as if a wedding band. Flügge and her sisters ran a popular fashion boutique known as the Schwestern Flügge, or Flügge Sisters, which was patronized by many sitters of Klimt and clients of the Wiener Werkstätte. Flügge loved wearing Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. Numerous photographs taken by Klimt and by fashion photographer Dora Kalmus, known as Madame Dora, subject of a recent Neue Galerie New York exhibition, confirm Flügge's preference for layering Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. Typically, she wore a brooch or two, accompanied by a long chain and maybe even a pendant. These usually unique designs were complemented with vividly patterned artistic reform-style dresses. Flügge even wore Wiener Werkstätte jewelry while on summer holiday, as evidenced by these candid photographs. One of Hoffman's earliest jewelry designs was a gift from Klimt to Flügge. The silver heart-shaped pendant shown here at center is set with opals, and it has a practical side as it incorporates a small mirror. In the photo on the right, taken by Klimt, she's seen using it. Hoffman's pendant seems to borrow from the embroidered panels made by Margaret MacDonald Mackintosh, which were installed in niches in the 8th Vienna Secession exhibition, illustrated here at left. They depict symbolist women in dreamy poses dressed in long gowns, embellished with pendants strikingly similar to the one Klimt gave Flügge. In addition to the heart-shaped pendant, Klimt gave Flügge a few square-shaped brooches designed by Hoffman, including this early example set with coral, lapis, malachite, and moonstones. The motifs and color palette echo Klimt's 1902 full-length portrait of Flügge, where he styled her wearing an artistic dress emblazoned with ornamental, jewel-like elements. Through the assistance of Klimt, one of the first interior design commissions awarded to the Wiener Werkstätte was to outfit the Schwestern Flügge Salon in 1904. The Flügge sisters displayed jewelry that they had on consignment from the Wiener Werkstätte in the black vitrine shown here on the left. Confirmation that women who favored artistic reform attire also collected Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. Somewhat surprisingly, however, these pieces did not sell well, and most were returned, probably because the items selected were rather modest, and the clients who frequented the Schwestern Flügge Salon preferred to shop directly at the Wiener Werkstätte. It is also noteworthy that many women who posed for Klimt in artistic dress also owned Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. One noteworthy example is Adele Bloch-Bauer. She was painted twice by Klimt and was socially progressive. For the most part, the art collection assembled by the Bloch-Bauers reflected a more conservative taste. They amassed a significant group of porcelain by the Imperial Viennese Manufactory, as well as Biedermeier paintings. But over time, they assembled an acclaimed suite of Klimt's canvases too. Klimt's 1907 golden-style portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer is appreciated as a masterpiece of 20th century art. In the numerous sketches he made in preparation for this picture, Klimt depicted Adele posed in artistic reform dresses that resemble designs from the Schwestern Flügge. And Adele did, at least on occasion, wear Wiener Werkstätte fashion too, as shown here on the left. In her first Klimt portrait, Adele Bloch-Bauer flaunts a dazzling diamond and gemstone choker, one indication of the vast wealth of the Bloch-Bauer family. Unfortunately, the lavish choker and the matching earrings were seized by the Nazis and have never been seen again. Records in the Wiener Werkstätte archive in Vienna confirm that she owned a few examples of Wiener Werkstätte jewelry too. Shown here is a sketch for a silver gilt and gem-set diadem, or tiara, designed for her by Wimmer Viskerl in 1912. I'm pairing it with a similar pearl-encrusted hair comb by Hoffman. Such pieces of jewelry were especially popular in Vienna, given the importance of ball season for the city's social calendar. One surviving example of jewelry that illustrates the taste of the Bloch-Bauers is the Toi et Moi diamond ring that Ferdinand bestowed upon his wife. When Adele died in 1925 at age 43, Ferdinand gave the ring to his great niece, Helene Marie Stutzova, as a wedding present, and she passed it down to her daughter, Charlotte Meyer, and it remained with the family until it went up for auction in December 2018 at Sotheby's London. Although only estimated to sell for between $6,000 and $8,000, given the ring's prominent provenance, the hammer price was over $55,000, and thus vastly exceeding expectations. The intellectual and artistic cross-pollination between Klimt and Hoffman appears to have been of great significance to them both. There are strong similarities between Klimt's portraits and Hoffman's earliest jewelry designs for the Wiener Werkstätte. For example, Hoffman seems to have drawn inspiration directly from Klimt's portraits of Viennese society women. Hoffman's brooch, made with gold, silver, and lapis, very closely resembles Klimt's 1907 golden-style portrait of Adele Bloch-Bauer. Even the stylized all-seeing eye motif borrows from the complex iconography of Klimt's masterwork. The same motif reappears a few years later in Klimt's cartoons for the Palais Stoclet dining room frieze, shown here at the left. The first owner of this brooch was Fritz Vandorfer's mother, Bertha. But in a number of photographs taken by Madame Dora, Emilia Fluge is seen wearing it, suggesting that Emilia modeled informally for the Wiener Werkstätte. Such pictures may have functioned as a form of advertisement both for her fashion salon and for the Wiener Werkstätte. And they underscore the link between women who adopted artistic reform dress, who were friends and patrons of Klimt, and who favored the radical jewelry designs fabricated by the Wiener Werkstätte. One of Klimt's most famous works, The Kiss, inspired a very personal piece of jewelry. Klimt sketched a brooch based upon the painting and added the name Emilia along the left side. A brooch was subsequently fabricated from gold, enamel, and diamonds, and it is believed to have been presented to Emilia as a birthday present. Evidently, she hung a reproduction of the painting over her bed. Klimt's brooch design for her emphasizes both his intention that the painting carried a personal and symbolic meaning unique to them as a couple, and it confirms the reading of jewelry, despite its diminutive scale, as equal in value to painting. Another important early supporter of the Wiener Werkstätte, the Schwestern Fluge and Klimt, was Sonia Knips. Knips was the subject of Klimt's first society portrait shown here on the right. Born Sonia Patier des Echelles, she and Klimt were intimately involved prior to this portrait. The relationship ended when he refused to marry her. Shortly thereafter, she wed the industrialist Anton Knips. Although they were not ideally suited, the marriage provided Knips with the means to construct a home and a lifestyle in the modern manner. Unlike other members of the aristocracy and upper class, Knips eschewed historicism in favor of paintings by Klimt and interior designs by Hoffman and the Wiener Werkstätte. Her sophisticated taste was on the periphery of mainstream fashion. In addition to this portrait, she acquired other paintings by Klimt, including the 1901 Fruit Trees and Adam and Eve from 1917. Knips was also a patron of the Schwestern Fluge, and she owned numerous examples of Wiener Werkstätte jewelry. The Schwestern Fluge ensemble on the left is paired with a magnificent collier de chien designed by Moser. She's posed in a settee by Hoffman in her home in Vienna, which he had remodeled. Here are additional photos taken of Knips in her Vienna townhouse. On the left, she models a dress from the Wiener Werkstätte's fashion department and has paired that with two Hoffman brooches, one of which is inset in color at the bottom center. On the right, she reclines in a gown made by the Schwestern Fluge, and hanging above her is the Fruit Trees Klimt landscape. These photographs confirm that she embodied the ideal modern Viennese patron, much like Fluge and Vandorfer, and that she both lived in a home of modern design and she dressed in artistic clothing and wore Wiener Werkstätte jewelry to telegraph her preferences. Around the time that Klimt and Hoffman met, and concurrent with the founding of the Vienna Secession, Klimt began turning out his first landscapes of idyllic country scenes. Landscapes went on to become a major preoccupation for Klimt when he started spending his summer holidays, starting around the turn of the century, in the lake region of Austria with the Floge family. Most of these canvases were square in format, such as the one depicted here on the right, a preference that is linked to his employment of a square viewfinder when choosing his subjects. Klimt's amateur interest in photography was another factor, coupled with his use of opera glasses and a telescope. These aids helped to bring his subjects closer while also flattening the scene and adding an element of abstraction. Hoffman had ample opportunity to study Klimt's landscape paintings. They were frequently included in exhibitions in Vienna. In addition, many of Hoffman's patrons, as we've already seen, owned these works and asked the architect to design interiors that would set them off to best advantage, such as with Knips and Vandorfer. Thus, it's unsurprising that Hoffman's work in the decorative arts began to take on more picturesque qualities as a result. As jewelers George B. Jacques and William E. Marcus put it in their 1882 book, Something About Neglected Gems, by the use of color, the work of the jeweler is raised to a fine art. He selects from the apparently endless varieties of certain precious stones, precisely as the painter selects his colors, and combining them judiciously produces a work of art. Certainly, one of the most significant shared commissions between Hoffman and Klimt was their joint involvement on the Palais Stoclet in Brussels. The dining room in particular, shown here on the left, demonstrates how Hoffman's luxurious tendencies in the decorative arts united beautifully with Klimt's own fascination with the precious and the ornamental. But the inspiration between Klimt and Hoffman was mutual, and the two artists enjoyed a symbiotic relationship. So while Hoffman adopted Klimt's format and style for his own jewelry designs, Klimt's work became even more decorative and abstract through his collaboration with Hoffman. For example, Hoffman's brooch of 1908, shown here on the left, incorporates a variety of multicolored stones and compares favorably to motifs found in Klimp's portrait of Fritz Riedler. If you look in the lower left corner of Klimp's painting, you'll notice that he has incorporated a brooch that looks like a Hoffman design, emphasizing the link between the artists. Riedler was a patron of the Wiener Werkstätte, of the Schwestern Floge, and also of Klimt, thus demonstrating the overlapping ties between these circles. In addition, she owned Wiener Werkstätte Jewelry. Hoffman favored a square format for many of the brooches that he created for the Wiener Werkstätte. The importance that he attached to jewelry in his oeuvre is underscored by the number of unique brooches that he designed, most of which were square in shape, as if he considered them miniature works of art, and borrowing a page from Klimt's preference for square format for his pictures. Hoffman's innovative brooches were initially strictly geometric and strident in form, but over time, his approach softened to incorporate naturalistic elements, including floral and plant motifs. Hoffman's infinite variety of brooches were made in silver and gold. Some were set with only a few stones, and others sported a wide variety of multi-hued gems. They were as changeable and versatile as a woman's wardrobe might require. Hoffman's visionary designs are without precedent. Although fashioned in keeping with the arts and crafts ideal of artists working in collaboration with trained craftsmen, these were not inspired by medieval or Renaissance prototypes, nor did they typically employ romantic or feminine motifs like their English and French counterparts. Instead, they should be read as miniature paintings with artistic merit equal to that of Klimt's autonomous canvases. A side-by-side comparison of contemporaneous jewelry designs by Hoffman and Moser with objects by Charles Robert Ashby and René Lalique clearly demonstrates the radical departure of the Viennese modernists. For example, in Lalique's design on the left, animal and floral elements are sensitively employed to create a jeweled object that captures and mirrors the beauty of the natural world. In a similar vein, Ashby also used nature as a touchstone. By contrast, the jewelry from Vienna uses nature as an exemplar, but transforms and abstracts it so completely that the source is nearly indiscernible. For example, the Moser silver and mother of pearl belt buckle could be read merely as a swirl of curling lines that terminate in pearlescent orbs. But most likely the point of inspiration was a fiddle-headed fern. Karl Blossfeld's well-known photographic studies from the late 19th and early 20th centuries were highly influential for designers of this period. They were compiled and published in 1928 under the title Art Forms in Nature. And of course, it's possible that Moser, like Lalique, stocked his studio with live plants for inspiration and reference. Thus, either photography and or direct interaction with nature may have even served as the point of inspiration for Moser's vine tendrils, just as photographic aids were employed by Klimpt for his work. In the same fashion, Klimt undertook his landscapes en plein air, and thus in direct engagement with nature. Over time, the Wiener Werkstette's production evolved from the strict geometry of Hoffman and Moser's early work to softer lines and more naturalistic influences favored by a younger generation of designers. When Moser left the Wiener Werkstätte in 1907 to pursue his painting career full-time, other members of the Wiener Werkstätte turned their hand toward jewelry, and some were quite gifted. Especially noteworthy are Karl Otto Czeska, Edward Joseph Immerviskerl, and Dagobert Peche, whose work is shown here. Viewing their jewelry and thinking of them in comparison to the early designs of Hoffman and Moser quickly makes clear how different their approach is. There is a greater emphasis in the work of the younger generation upon incorporating floral elements in more feminine and pretty designs. Also worth emphasizing is the preference for precious materials such as diamonds and gold. As the Wiener Werkstätte became more established and attracted a prestigious clientele, the arts and crafts aesthetic was replaced with one that more readily conveyed the wealth and social standing of the wearer. One such example is found in the patronage of the Viennese family. When Fritz Vandorfer's fortune was depleted and the firm needed new backers, it was Otto and Eugenia Viennese who stepped in to fill this role. They were the Wiener Werkstätte's principal supporters after Vandorfer's departure in 1913. They were also major collectors of Klimp's work. Klimpt painted a portrait of Eugenia Viennese, shown at left, and also one of her daughter, Mädchen. Eugenia Viennese was a client of the Schwesternflüge, and the dress that Mädchen wore for her Klimpt portrait was made by the Flüge Salon. But the Viennese sought more than just modern portraits and artistic dress. Like the other figures considered in this talk, they likewise wanted to live in a home that embodied their progressive ideals. They commissioned Hoffman to design their country home, which was fully outfitted by the Wiener Werkstätte. It even included custom robes that coordinated with the interiors, such as the one worn by Klimt on the left. But their interest in the Gesamtkunstwerk went further. They also acquired a luxurious suite of jewelry from the Wiener Werkstätte around the time that Klimt painted the Viennese portraits, including the gold, ivory, and diamond bracelet shown here at top left, as well as a matching necklace made from gold and ivory today in the Max collection. Otto Viennese bought a spectacular tobacco case for his own use, shown at right, that is adorned with various gemstones and grapevine tendrils, suggestive of fecundity. With the outbreak of World War I, jewelry became even more of a status symbol than it was before the conflict. Undoubtedly, part of the rarity of Wiener Werkstätte jewelry today can be explained by the fact that some pieces were unfortunately broken apart and melted down as fashions changed and fortunes faltered. Those works that do survive offer tantalizing clues about the women, and occasionally men, who were fortunate enough to own and wear these precious and coveted jewelry pieces. As we've learned, Wiener Werkstätte jewelry was conceived by designers and embraced by clients who sought a new way to express their taste and style. These avant-garde accessories reflected changes in society, and in the role of women. It required both wealth and self-confidence to flaunt these radical works. For some, such jewel designs established their status as trendsetters. For others, Wiener Werkstätte jewelry was a way of challenging convention in very much the same way that they adopted artistic fashion and commissioned their portraits by Klimt. The figures examined here embrace the credo that art can be used to proclaim a modern identity. And in the words of Hoffman and Moser, intercourse with beautiful things makes us beautiful. Such words rang true then, just as they do today. To learn more, please refer to the Wiener Werkstätte jewelry publication available through the Neue Galerie New York bookstore. Thank you very much.